Good morning, everyone. We'll begin shortly while we're in the process of letting everyone into the call. So give us just a few minutes and we'll begin today's call. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy that you are able to join us celebrating this magnificent Monday. And as we get closer to Thanksgiving, I know all of our school systems are getting very excited for their time away. And we're certainly looking forward to that as well. It's good to be with each of you this morning on our monthly educator certification and background credentialing monthly call. Last month, approximately 10 days after our monthly call, we did send out a monthly newsletter through an email blast and certainly hope you found that to be helpful. We will continue that practice, so you will receive an email blast shortly after returning from the Thanksgiving holiday. This newsletter is just another way for us to serve our stakeholders. And speaking of serving you, I hope that you can see the metrics on the slide here. Our team continues to close applications at an unprecedented rate. Our goal is to process applications within 15 business days. And as you can see, 74% of the applications that we've received were processed within 15 business days in October. And we'll continue to work diligently to achieve that goal. Our specialists, many of whom are on the call, are simply amazing. They are committed professionals who work diligently each and every day to serve you. Next up, I would like to share some certification processing reminders. So please be reminded that the applications should be dated October 1st, 2023. We are no longer accepting applications without the most recent revision date listed on the bottom. Also, we will no longer hold applications waiting for evidence of payment. These applications will be closed as unprocessed. We will also no longer accept application pages to modify incorrect requests as feedback follow-up cases. Please work diligently with your educators to ensure that they are using the appropriate applications, as well as you use those appropriate applications so that we can get those processed for you as quickly as possible. At this time, I'm going to turn the call over to my colleague, Ms. Paula Bell.
Thank you, Dr. Geoffrion. Good morning. As a reminder, the certification or the certificate is considered a legal document. An educator certificate is public, but it is owned by the educator, with the exception of the reasons that we have listed in Chapter 19 of Bulletin 746. That's the criminal history, cheating, fraud, by decree of the governor or as mandated by law. All changes to a certificate must be requested by the educator or in conjunction with the employing school system or the teacher preparation provider. We cannot make changes to a certificate. Our office cannot make those changes without a request being formally made by the educator. The formal request, of course, comes to us as an application packet. Certification is evidence-based. Although the educator knows his or her history, you as an employer or provider may know the history, we have to have that documented. So our office can only determine eligibility for certification based on the documents that are provided or are in the educator's file. So the application process, you can find the right forms on teachlouisiana.net. Those are fillable PDFs. And you are to complete those electronically. Use the current application and forms available. The current revision date is October 1st, 2023. So look for that on the bottom right-hand corner of the application when you download it. If you save it off on your computer, verify again that you are using the current packet. All the applications include instructions and checklists. Those can also be reviewed on teachlouisiana.net. Many of the packets have links in them, so you want to be able to open that on your computer rather than print it out. Review all official transcripts and verify that the degrees in the coursework that that has been taken, that those things are completed and have been awarded. You want to check that transcript before you submit it. We oftentimes see those submitted before the degrees have been conferred. Professional conduct forms must be completed with every application. Those need to be signed and dated. And those can be signed electronically as with all of the other parts of the application. Please, please, please review that packet prior to submitting. It will decrease the number of declinations and it will streamline the process for certification. Submit via the Human Resource Personnel account in Teach Louisiana or Program Provider account if you are the provider online in the Teach LA Live certification portal. So there's a few things that we look for. First line review, application minimum requirements. Without these things, we can't process it. It will be bumped back. So currently accepted the current application packet, make sure that it is fully completed and that there is an actual request that is made using that packet. Of course, we're looking for 2 forms of ID, that social security card, which is a requirement, and a driver's license or state ID. Make sure that that professional conduct form is fully completed with the accurate information. Check for keystroke errors. Check to make sure that that date of birth is correct and not the date that was signed. All required signatures must be less than 90 days from the date submitted on that application page and that professional conduct form. We need that payment confirmation document, whether it be a screenshot or an email. Either one is acceptable, but we have to have something to confirm that payment was made other than just writing the confirmation number on the packet, on the application. Make sure that those experience verification forms, when you're submitting those with the 10/1/2023 renewal hire status change application, make sure those are fully completed. We've added methods of evaluation because that is required by law. They have to be evaluated. So that needs to be indicated on that experience verification form. This does not mean the request will be approved if you do all of these things. It's only that if you do these minimum requirements, that it will be reviewed and processed. It will then move to a specialist to be formally processed. Duplicate submissions and singles. It is, if advised via email that a case cannot be processed and to resubmit with all corrections, then you need to take that corrected application and it should be submitted as a new case with all those supporting documents, including that payment confirmation. Do not reference the original case as it was not processed. It was closed. So make sure if you are advised via email that it can't be processed, put it all together corrected with the supporting documents as a new case. If you are providing applicants copies of signed applications that will be submitted by your office, please stress to them that they should not also submit it. So duplicate submissions, it causes all sorts of confusion, and it slows the processing down of not just their application, but the others that are in queue. So check the status of a submission by using your history link at the top of the Teach LA Live portal page, understanding that you can only see the packets and the applications that you submitted under that account. In the 90-day timeline, the certification office can only accept applications dated and signed within 90 days. If you submit an application with the dates beyond 90 days, it will be returned unprocessed. So applications should be complete when submitted. However, incomplete applications with just one missing item will be declined, requesting that missing information. That missing item, if it is submitted within 90 days with that feedback letter, if it's done so within 90 days, no additional application or fee is required. Unmet requirements are different than missing items. Missing items, a missing item is submitted more than 90 days from declination. A new application and processing fee are required. Incomplete applications with more than one item missing, they're automatically denied or declined and require a new application and processing fee be submitted. I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Lana Hutchinson.
Good morning, everybody. A few more best practices when submitting applications. All requests that are made on a particular application should only be submitted with that one application attached. We can't accept multiple applications attached to the same submission. So when you have an educator that needs to renew and also wants to add something, those are two separate applications, the evaluation application and the renewal hire application. So those would be submitted separately with separate supporting documents and separate payment confirmations. Be sure that anytime there are multiple requests being made, that the individual applications are submitted each as their own case. This helps us with application routing, processing, making sure we're assigning to the best specialists that can handle each type of request. Scan all your documents upright and in the order received or listed in the application instructions, and combine them whenever possible into a single PDF file. We then strongly encourage you to check that combined file and make sure everything that you intended to include is there before uploading it to the portal. We do understand some documents like transcripts or score reports are often password protected and can't be combined, and that's fine if you need to have two attachments in the case of a protected file. But in most cases, if at all possible, try to have those combined into one document. We strongly encourage you to use digital resources to make all that happen. Submit the completed electronic form using tools that are available either for free on the internet, using Adobe Pro features to combine those PDFs into one document. But if you choose to print and scan, most physical scanners do have an option to scan everything into a single PDF file. There are other digital phone-based applications that like Genius Scan or Cam Scanner that will also allow you to scan multiple pages into a single file. If you choose to print and scan, remember many of our forms now, especially with the new revisions, are legal size. So you'll need to make sure your scanner is set to scan for legal, that your printer is set to print to legal, and that all of the information included on the forms is included in the scan. And again, check those scan results after you have done the scanning to make sure everything is there. We are seeing kind of an uptick in legal, particularly on the legal size pages, where the right side of the page, for those that are both landscape and legal, or the signature sections at the bottom of the portrait-oriented legal size pages are cut off because they've been printed and scanned in a letter format where legal paper or legal size documents were needed in order to capture all the information. When you do submit your documents, remember we cannot accept any certification documentation via email or attached to a question case. So if you're sending applications, those need to be submitted as an application using the submit certification application document. The same would be true with follow-up documents or any other documents that we will need to finalize processing an application. This also helps us ensure our routing is appropriate and avoids delays so that we don't have to respond and say we can't take this via email when it was submitted as a question. When you are submitting your applications, there's an application type drop-down list, and we ask that you choose the appropriate one for the type of application that you're submitting. Particularly now as our team is growing and we have lots of different specialists at different points in their training process, we really rely on the application type that was selected when the application was submitted to make sure that we are assigning those appropriately to somebody who is well-trained and capable of handling that type of work. When the categories are selected incorrectly, that will impact our ability to make sure the right person is handling that request. We also are, as part of our ongoing processing strategy, at times we will prioritize certain types of applications. We've recently had funding issues related to mentor and practitioner. And if those are not submitted by selecting the correct application type, when something needs prioritizing, your applications will get missed if they aren't appropriately labeled. We also ask and encourage everyone, both the educator and the HR personnel or preparation providers, to check the current certification records before making any request and submitting. On teachlouisiana.net, you can verify a certificate and look at the current validity, what type of certificate they currently hold. Make sure that for our preparation providers, that they've held the practitioner license or the resident teacher certificate in the appropriate area. You can double check all of those kinds of things before making the request, paying for the request, and submitting the application. We also encourage our educators and HR offices to check Compass prior to making a submission. HR offices should be able to log in and check, at least for your local district. If you have somebody who's moved from district to district and you as an HR person can't see the other district's reports, educators have the ability to log in and see everything that's associated with their social security number. So ask the educators to take a look for you if you can't confirm for yourself through your own access to the Compass information. Make sure those evaluations that are necessary are reflected in Compass and finalized and were found effective. If you're filling out that new experience verification form and they've served some time in non-public, and so therefore you've chosen local evaluation for those non-publics, be sure to get the local evaluation attestation from the non-public school before submitting the request. Likewise, if they've been out of state and moved back, be sure to get that out of state experience verification attestation before submitting the request. So between Compass, experience in a non-public, the local evaluation, or experience out of state, the out of state attestation, you should be able to verify that they have the appropriate number of evaluations necessary before the request is ever submitted. And this will ensure things go more smoothly for your educators and that folks are advanced and renewed appropriately. When you submit applications that require a self-evaluation, we strongly encourage that all the course codes and numbers for anywhere where there's coursework required are listed on the self-evaluation. We receive a lot of these that just say yes, 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 and don't include any reference to the specific course the educator feels they completed that fulfills that requirement. While our office is always going to check everything on every transcript we have on file to see what matches, having the educator list those specific courses for themselves helps them ensure that they've met requirements before they pay for the request and submit it, and helps make sure our office pays extra attention to those specific courses that they think will fulfill the requirement. We're not going to deny if they've put something there that doesn't meet that requirement, but something else does, or if they get it wrong and have 2 courses flipped or anything like that. We're not grading them on how well they filled it out, but it does help us make sure that we're considering everything that they think. It helps us identify if there's a course they've listed, but it's not on any of the transcripts we have. It helps us identify what might be missing so that we can provide good and accurate feedback to guide them on what their next steps should be. I think Rachel might be next. Is that right?
Yeah, I can go ahead and do the slide, Lana.
Oh no, I can do that one. I'm sorry. I thought that was my last one. If licenses are required, this is mostly our ancillary service type applications, then we do really strongly encourage that you double check that license before submitting the application to make sure that there's still validity on that license. And if it's approaching, if it's really close, then make sure that the educator has re-upped, renewed, done whatever they need to do with the licensing board to get that license renewed before submitting the application. Right now, we have cleared most of the backlog, so things are not taking as long, but those licenses do need to be valid at the time of processing, not just at the time of submission. So when it's really close, make sure that it's renewed and fully valid and most of them are at least a year so that we are sure that it'll still be valid when we process the request. If scores are required, also HR authorized personnel should be able to see everything that we have in the Teach Louisiana website for praxis scores. Be sure you're searching with social security number though, not name, although it's not super common. We have seen printouts from Teach Louisiana with a name on them that are not actually that individual's scores. It's somebody else with the same name or a similar name. And folks are verifying scores by name, and then we're not able to use them. They aren't the same person's scores. We are processing everything by social security number, and the only things we can use, whether it's Compass or Praxis scores, have to be associated with the correct social security number. If a Praxis official score report is available, we would encourage you to include it with the request. If you can verify we have the scores, it doesn't need to be there. But if you're not able to verify whether or not we have that score, just include the report, and that will again prevent a denial where we're asking for evidence of the passing scores. This last thing is always a little tricky to explain. When a graduate degree is a qualifying requirement for either issuance of a certificate or the addition of an endorsement, then if the person qualifies for that certificate or that endorsement, we will add that degree as part of adding the endorsement or issuing the certificate. So for the level 3s and EDLs that require a graduate degree, if the graduate degree is not already on there, but transcripts are included with the application, as long as they qualify for the level 3, we're going to add that because it's got to be on the certificate for us to issue a level 3. And we'll do that at no charge. Same would be true for endorsements like reading specialists and academically gifted that also require a graduate degree. If a graduate degree is not already on the certificate and transcripts are included, we will add that because it's required in order to meet those endorsements. There's no need to send a separate application, pay additional fee, or anything else. Now, if the person does not qualify, so they are missing one of the other requirements to meet level 3. They don't have 5 years of experience, or they're not eligible for EDL because they haven't taken the praxis. If they otherwise don't qualify, we will not add the degree. But at that, we would recommend submitting the request for the level 3 or the graduate endorsement or the EDL. Let us process that. And then if we're not able to add the higher request or issue the higher certificate, then at that point, they can submit a second application if they want the degree added while they fulfill the rest of the requirements for the other endorsement or the higher level certificate. Now I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Thank you, Lana. So actually, as Lana mentioned earlier with the cascading applications, so in an effort to grow our office as we're onboarding new specialists, certain specialists are designated certain applications, while others of us that have been here for a while do tend to only process the more complicated ones. And so just in an effort to make sure that everything is getting processed in a very succinct manner, we do ask that it be anytime an application is what we call a cascading application, that you submit that application first. And a good example of that would be if an educator, let's say, is trying to add on educational technology leadership. Well, our policy does require that an individual hold a valid level 3 certificate or type A certificate. So if that individual has a type B or level 2 or anything less than that, you would want to make sure that that individual either has the request for the renewal of that hire be submitted and processed, or submitted and renewed prior to then making the request for that contingent application. So again, wait until that first application is processed before then submitting the cascading or dependent application. When you are submitting those dependent applications, at least 2 weeks after the first application is submitted. Right now, it may be a little bit less due to our efforts to work through that backlog. But 2 weeks is definitely generically throughout the year what we kind of ask for. Or if you would like to schedule office hours because you need both of those applications expedited for pay purposes, or your school board is meeting and that individual does need that credential, then be sure to schedule office hours to either discuss those applications and or ask that our office expedite those applications. Also, when requesting an add-on endorsement area, because we see this quite often, please make sure either yourself and or the educator is checking his or her validity prior to uploading to ensure that the certification, the contingent certification, is valid or not close to expiration. That is something, again, that we see oftentimes where an individual will request an add-on or a degree or something even as simple as a name change, and their certificate is expired. Our policy does not allow us to make any amendments or changes to a license if it is not valid. And if the first application is denied for any reason whatsoever, please use the Ask a Question feature on the homepage of our Teach Live portal to request that the dependent case be canceled before processing, so that way we can preserve that fee and or prevent a second denial. So certification status changes, as Paula had mentioned earlier in the call, one of the new things that we require as part of the November 1st revision is an experience verification form is required with every single application, specifically also dependent to the certification status changes. So renewal is based in Louisiana on effective evaluations, whether that be Compass, if an individual is teaching in a public or private, in a public or charter, or local evaluations if they're in a non-public or diocesan setting. With the adoption of the new policy several months ago, that does now allow us to mix evaluations. So we are beginning to see a lesser amount of certification status changes. But in the event that an individual is not practicing, you would want to go ahead and make that request at the behest of that individual who is either getting ready to exit as part of your district, or they were a former teacher and let's say they're teaching in another state or another country, or they're serving as an educational leader, or they just left the profession altogether. Then you, as their current or former employing authority, does have the ability to request that request for the non-practicing. Again, teachers or leaders who are not serving or employed should definitely make this request because it does preserve the validity of that certificate. And then individuals who are serving on an educational leader certificate, but did have that active certificate, that teaching certificate out there, should also make sure that they put their teaching certificate into non-practicing status. And the same would be true for the inverse of that. If they were a former leader and they've now transitioned back to the classroom, just make sure that they do put their educational leader certificate into non-practicing. And then just a couple quick reminders, the effective date of non-practicing should be the last date of employment in the evaluated role within the certification validity. So again, make sure that you are checking that individual's either 3 or 1, 3 or 5 year validity, because we do see oftentimes where someone will ask for to enter into a role and it predates or postdates the validity. And it does have to, the formula that we use, it does have to be within the certification, the educator's validity. And then of course, no earlier than August 1st of 2012, which officially began the implementation of Compass. And so the next one is operational role. And again, this is where that experience verification form is required. And it's very paramount that that, as Paula mentioned, with the new experience verification form, we do have that method of evaluation. One thing that we've really worked hard in collaborating with our Compass team is anytime operational role is being requested, one thing that they had asked of us is to now request a job description. And the reason being is because we were finding that so many schools were requesting operational role, but when we were talking with our Compass team, they essentially determined that there are very few roles that really should fall into this bucket. So their guidance to us is that anytime somebody's essentially at a school, you're working at a school, then almost every single time, even if you have to be creative, an individual can be tied to student growth measures. And so y'all probably have seen in the last month or so, when those job descriptions are being submitted, we are actually first reviewing them, then we're reviewing them in tandem with our Compass team and making a determination whether we can honor that request for operational role or whether we should deny that request for that operational role. Anytime it is denied, we do, of course, like I said, we work very closely with our Compass team and they try to give us very clear guidance on the method that the individual can be used, whether it's working with the individual to evaluate them with the teacher rubric, with the leader rubric, or a hybrid combination of the two. And of course, anytime you're denied the request for the operational role, there is always, if there is no certification validity left, there is an opportunity for that educator to appeal, to have that certificate potentially extended by our Teacher Certification Appeals Council. And or if you as the school system are just kind of at a loss for how you should be evaluating them, we would definitely encourage you to email the Compass team at compass@la.gov. And the individual that oversees that is phenomenal and definitely will partner with you to kind of give you some tips and tricks to say, like, again, how and to be creative to use these different rubrics. So if operational role is honored, it will take effect on the first day of employment in that role. And again, operational does only apply to individuals that cannot be evaluated via student growth measures. Educational leaders are not and will never be placed into operational role. As anybody who is typically working at the district level, the policy and law does allow local evaluations to be able to renew. And again, just to reiterate, accurate experience verification forms are to be included with any and all status change requests for the operational role. It also does require a job description, again, so that we can collaborate with our Compass team. And this is now noted in the updated experience verification form, which will have that date of October 2023. And it's all part of that November 1st revision, which, since we're now 13 days into November, it is the only application that can be submitted. Everything else, if it's an old application, will actually be kicked back on our first line review, and then you will be required to turn around and go ahead and submit that November 1st application. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our director, Christy Ballou.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everyone. So I'm just going to talk through a few things about changing portal users first. So, most of you on this call have either an authenticated HR account or an authenticated teacher preparation program provider account. And we know that sometimes, just as with the LDOE, there is a shift in users or roles, and you might need to add or remove a portal user so that they can have access to the appropriate documents and have the ability to upload the appropriate application types. So we ask that you use the authenticated user signature form. You make sure that you complete that form electronically and then actually physically sign it as well. Then upload that into the online portal as an application type listed as authorized signatures. And it really should be uploaded from one of the current authenticated user accounts. If you have a scenario where someone has left and you don't have access to that account, please use the ask a question feature to kind of um, provide to us the scenario that you have. And there are other ways that we can verify information to set up an account for you. But we do ask that you upload that into the online portal as an application type, authorized signatures. Then within the notes of that submission, indicate, if you have to transfer, add, remove, transfer one account to the other, which is all included in the form as well. And then we do ask that you schedule an office hours call to discuss the changes. We want to make sure that we're understanding what you put on the form correctly, and that you all are understood the nuances between the online portal and, of course, teachlouisiana.net. So we do ask that you go ahead and schedule an office hours call to discuss those changes as well. We do have someone who kind of does a first line review of those and might make a few initial changes. But they're typically going to have most of those changes done through an office hours call with us. So how do you schedule office hours? Well, the first thing that we do is there is an office hours button in your authenticated account, and it should take you to a PDF document that has a 6-step process to go through to get the office hours call scheduled. Now, the first thing, of course, is logging into your HR or teacher preparation program provider authenticated account in Teach LA Live. If you go to the instructions will tell you to use the ask a question feature that's along the top ribbon of that page. You are going to choose the topic as HR preparation provider office hours in that drop down menu of that question. And then in the notes section or in the actual question section of the body of that question, you'll indicate whatever your questions are. Provide us specific certification questions like, what are the steps for, the TEP or something like that. You might want to indicate specific case numbers, provide us the 00274, whatever case number, or a previous case number that usually starts with 5 or 6. You may want to indicate the candidate's name or any kind of details about your specific certification questions in that particular question. Typically, depending on the complexity of the question and what it is, we can do 3 to 5 different scenarios in a 15-minute call. But the more information you put in that note scheduler section, the more we can be prepared to answer those questions during the office hour call, and we can maximize that full 15 minutes. We do some pre-work based on what you put in that question so that we can try and have an answer ready for you for that particular scenario. Sometimes we have to do some research on that educator specifically, their whole scenario. So that's what we ask for you to put that in there. Of course, submit that question case, and you're actually going to receive a case number. Then you'll go back to that instruction document, and I believe it is step 6 that takes you to the link to actually schedule that office hours call. You're going to be choosing a date and time. If you're not taken to a screen to choose a date and time for your call, then you've not actually finished the process and you don't actually have a call scheduled with us. So you'll use that online scheduler. You'll put that question case number in the reservation, and that's all we need to go back and reference that question that you submitted after you've chosen your date and time. If you have really complex cases or lots of people to talk about, I do recommend scheduling more than one 15-minute call back to back. so that we can get that done. Again, expediting can be requested depending on the complexity of the application type will determine how many we can get done, but the more information you provide to us in that question, the more we can get done in your office hours call. Now, I will caution you, if you do have to expedite an educational leader portfolio, 240 clock hour portfolio submission, we can only do that in a minimum of 30 minutes. So you will need to be scheduling 2 back-to-back office hours calls to get one of those expedited. Those don't get expedited very often, but in the event that they do need that 30-minute call to do that. I will now move it on to our question and answer section. Do we have any questions from anybody? Please feel free to unmute or type in the chat.
Chrissy, I have a question from an individual that asked if we will be uploading the chat today. I mean, uploading the presentation in the chat today.
I did. I
She
can
did,
do it
okay.
again. I
Yeah.
can drop it in there again.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, and then the deck will also be posted to our normal sites, Louisiana Believes, where the LDOE monthly call library is located. It'll be under the certification monthly call. Our comms team usually gets that posted within a couple of days. And then, of course, we can post it to our HR section of the teachlouisiana.net as well, HR and teacher preparation provider. It looks like we have a question that says it's not always clear what document is missing in a feedback response. Can it be made clear and specific? We are working with our specialists to try and indicate what specifically is missing. It will usually be listed in 2 paragraphs. So there's one paragraph that'll tell you that one item is missing, and then there'll usually be an other section that says what is specifically missing in that section. So we are working with our our staff to make sure that they are very specific in what is missing. Looks like it's also been asked, can feedback letters say specifically that a new fee is required? In general, our specialists do include when there's a new application and a new fee that is required. Please note that if it says that it's only one item that is missing, generally there is no new fee that is required. So it will not indicate that a fee is required there. Generally speaking, most of our specialists, if a fee is required, they will indicate that in the letter. Any other questions? Any of our co-hosts, did y'all get messaged individually for any questions that need to be answered? Again, please feel free to unmute and ask your questions. We were kind of reviewing some things today, nothing super new or earth-shattering, but we wanted to make sure that while we had the time, especially since the last few monthly calls, we ran out of time, that we were reminding folks of these basic tips and tricks. So next, I don't see any other questions in the chat, and no one came off of mute. So I'm just going to go through important dates. Of course, later this week, they have the Early Childhood Care and Education Advisory Council. Thanksgiving holiday is next week, and then probably Friday as well is also a possible holiday. Acadiana Day, I believe, is usually a declared holiday. We will be trying to get our certification email blast out on the week of November 27th. So that'll be after most schools return to school from the holiday break. The 30th is the Superintendent Advisory Council meeting. Then, of course, in December, the 12th and 13th are the BESI committee and board meetings. And our monthly call, which I thought was listed on here, but clearly it is not. Let me grab the calendar real quick, is on December 18th next month. And then, of course, you have your supports and resources where you can find the school system support calendar that shows when all of our monthly calls are scheduled. They also take you to links to where the past monthly calls are stored in the library. Then we have an educator resource guide, school system planning resource, family support toolbox library, of course, Bulletin 746, which is our guiding bulletin as far as policy is concerned, and then our links to our Teach Louisiana online certification portal. Thank you all for participating today, and have a great week. Happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays coming up as well.